It's not mine. But thank you, that was sweet.
I have shakers for you. Pick. Which one do you like better? Oh, I like
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And Baruchim Abayim, welcome to Temple Bethel and to our Kabbalat Shabbat service, our welcome service. Want to particularly welcome all of our friends and guests that are here today. Hi. Shabbat Shalom. Nice to see you all here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming.
We have a surprise. Say Shabbat Shalom again. Go ahead.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Beautiful. You guys are pros already. You've been here like 5 minutes and you're pros. We're so glad y'all are here. Thank you for coming and for being here. Want to get a couple housekeeping, administrative things out of the way. For those of you who might not have figured it out yet, restrooms are back down the hall where we came in. By those doors, you turned right on that hallway, and they're up the ramp. Men's is the first door on the left, the women's is the second all the way up. So you'll see it, they're labeled, but they're kind of on the other side of the building if you need it. That's one administrative thing. Second, I'm going to ask if you can turn off or at least silence cell phones if you haven't already. That's appreciated, and that way we can stay in the spirit and the experience of the service and not get lost in phone calls and ringing. If God's calling, he's probably not going to call the cell phone. So that's all I'm saying. So welcome, everybody. We're glad you're here and glad to celebrate Shabbat and welcome Shabbat with us. And this is really, it's a beautiful sight to see all of you here. And also hoping this is not going to be the first time, or if it is the first time, but hopefully it won't be the last time we all get together. And we're hoping this is going to be the first night in building relationships and building community together between our different faith communities. And so we're glad you're here to start that with me, at least first time for me being here in Birmingham. But we hope to continue building that over the months and years to come. So thank you for being here to start it out. Shabbat is a really special time for the Jewish people and for the Jewish community, and it's a time of rest, and it's a time of recharging. I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but it's such a special time that in the 14th and 15th century, the mystics who lived in Sfat in northern Israel, what they would do is they would dress up for Shabbat, and then they would literally go running out into the mountains and the fields and start singing and dancing as a way to welcome Shabbat in. They were so excited for Shabbat to be here and for Shabbat to come, they wanted to run out and sing and dance and welcome, imagining her as a bride, welcoming her into the city and into their synagogues. So that's the kind of enthusiasm we want to have today, and that's why we have Robin Berger on guitar to help lead us in song, and Dahlia Abrams to lead us in singing together as well. So we're really grateful and thankful that they're here to sing with us today. So thank you, ladies. And if you want to sing along, that's going to help the energy and the spirit. So some of you are like, I don't know Hebrew. That's okay. So there's two ways, a couple different options you have. If you open up your books, we're going to be in this one. It's called Sidor Lev Shalem. If you pick up one that says Etz Chaim on the front, that's not going to be the right one. You want the other one. They used to be different colors, so I could say like blue and red. They changed the prayer book color to red, so now I can't do that. If you open it up, you'll see, for example, on page 10, which is where we're going to start, on the bottom left-hand side, you'll see there's some words in red. That's the Hebrew transliterated into English letters, so you can still follow along. So if you don't know Hebrew, but you want to sing along, you're welcome to try out following in the red. If you're not digging that or it's not working for you, a lot of the tunes we'll be doing repeat themselves. So after a couple times of going through, you'll be able to kind of pick up the tune. And you're welcome to go la 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 is perfectly fine. Ta na na, yai da dai. Any of those are perfectly acceptable alternatives if you're not able to. And if that's not working for you either, that's okay. You can also just kind of sit and close your eyes and listen to everybody else singing around you and have that be a kind of meditative experience for you as well. Am I forgetting anything, ladies? So again, thank you for being here. We're going to begin and open up our service today on page 10 with Yedid Nefesh.
We're actually going to start with Hine.
Oh, that's right. We're actually going to start with something else today. We're going to warm up a little bit.
So,
see, I forgot. I have a sheet in front of me, and I still forgot. We're going to open up with a Hebrew song. It's called Hine Matov. It's not in your books, but it's a song. It comes from the book of Psalms, and it's about how wonderful it is for everybody, for us to all be together. So Robin's going to lead us, and then we'll go into page 10.
nice traditional one. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. We're going to make it just a little bit higher for us. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. And wonderful it is that we're sitting together as one community. So thank you for being here and joining us as we welcome in Shabbat. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad.
And as a way of introducing the service, we're going to continue now on page 10 with Yedid Nefesh, a poem about the love between God and Shabbat and the Jewish people.
start with ay, ay, ay. It's not in the book, but I promise you'll catch on really quickly. Ay, ay, ay. Those are the words. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, ay, ay. Here we go. Ay, ay, ay.
Y'all sound really good for being here the first time. We'll continue with Psalm 95, beginning on page 11. Continue privately.
ארבעים שנה כות בדור ואומר, המתועל לבבהם והם לא ידעו דרכי, אשר נשבעתי ואפי, אם יבואון על מנוחתי.
Continue with Psalm 96, page 13. We're at the red arrow, page 14.
ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, ירם הים ומלואו השדה וכל אשר בו, אז ירננו כל עצי היער, לפני אדוני קיווה לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק ועמים באמונתו. אדוני מלך תגל הארץ.
We continue privately.
אוהבי אדוני שנאו רע, שומר נפשות חסידיו, מיד רשעים יצילם. אור זרוע לצדיק ולישרי לב, שמחה, שמחו צדיקים באדוני, והודו לזכר קודשו.
Page 17, Psalm 98. We'll read it responsively in the English. A psalm, sing to Adonai a new song, for Adonai has wrought wonders. God's right hand and holy arm have brought deliverance.
Adonai declared deliverance as nations looked on. God's righteousness was revealed.
God dealt faithfully and kindly with the house of Israel. The very ends of the earth saw our God's saving power.
Out to Adonai, all the earth, break out in joyful singing. Sing to Adonai to the music of the lyre and voices, making music together. With horns and shofar cries, trumpet the presence of the sovereign Adonai.
Let the sea and all that is in it roar, the earth and all who inhabit it thunder. Let rivers clap hands while mountains sing in harmony, greeting Adonai who comes to judge the earth, judging the world with justice and the nations with truth.
ירם הים ומלואו תבל ויושביה, נהרות ימחאו כף, יחד הרים ירננו. לפני אדוני קיווה לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק ועמים במישרים.
Page 19.
אדוני מלך ירגזו עמים.
We'll join together 3 lines from the bottom at the right, at the red arrow, page 20. See, for those keeping track, how many Psalms have we done? We started with 95, 96, 97, 98, 99. And now we're going to do Psalm 29, which is the 6th Psalm before we move in and welcome in Shabbat. So in a sense, we're walking through the past week with each of the Psalms representing a day of the week. Psalm 29 is going to represent Friday. And then we'll sing a psalm that welcomes in Shabbat and treats Shabbat as a bride before we'll sing the psalm for Shabbat. So as we'll continue with Psalm 29, page 21, as I invite you to rise for Psalm 29.
מזמור לדוד, הבו לאדוני בני אלים, הבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, הבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, השתחוו לאדוני בהדרת קודש. כל אדוני על המים, אל הכבוד יראים, אדוני Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, Vaishaber Adonai et arzei halvanon, Vayarkidem kemo egel Levanon veSiryon, כמו בן רעמים, כל אדוני חוצב להבות אש, כל אדוני יכיל מדבר, יכיל אדוני מדבר קדש, כל אדוני יכול לילות. ויחשוף יערות ובהיכלו כולו מרכבות, כולו עובר, כולו מרכבות. אדוני למבול ישב, וישב אדוני מלך לעולם, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום.
You may be seated. As I mentioned at the beginning, the rabbis in Tzfat imagined this as kind of the bride coming in to meet her groom. Imagine Shabbat as a bride. You'll see here that Rabbi Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz wrote a song about that as a kind of procession, wedding processional march. So we're going to go ahead and sing it, but as you'll see on page 25, there's a part where we rise and turn towards the entrance. That's at the part where we imagine Shabbat is actually coming in. So just as a wedding, we stand up when the bride comes in and turn to face the bride. We're going to do the same thing as we get to the end on the last paragraph on page 25. But we'll begin first, page 23, in this song called Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 bnei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 bnei Shabbat nekavela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibur achad, ish miyanu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad, shmo echad, l'shem u'tiferet v'tehila. Yakrat Shabbat l'penelcha, ki mekor ha'bracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, zukzor se'ezrat Shabbat me'atchila. Yikdash melech ir melucha, kumi Zion mito'afecha, Rama shevet be'emek habacha, ve'hu yachamol alayich chemla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 leShabbat nekavela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 leShabbat nekavela.
Page 24.
Ignari me'afar hami, lipshi bigdei tifarach hami, al yad ben sha'alei, horba el nafshi ala, zoreri
25.
והיו למשיסה שוסיים, ורחקו מבעלייך, יסיס עלייך אלוהים, עם סוד חטאת הנחלה, ימין שמאל תרצים, לעץ אדוני תריצים, על יד איש ותרצית, ונצמחה נתילה.
Please rise at bottom of page 25.
בואי בשלום, עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובזולה, תוך כדי הסגולה, בואי כלה, בואי כלה, זאת אמונה הסגולה, בואי כלה, שבת מלכה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, יאללה, everyone turn back around, לשבת לקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, יאללה, 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 לשבת לקבלה.
You may be seated. And now that we've welcomed in the bride, it's only appropriate that we recite Psalm 92, which is appropriately titled the Psalm for Shabbat. So we'll continue with Psalm 92, page 27.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך העליון, ולזמר לשמך העליון, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, עלי עזור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון וחינוך. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך העליון, ולזמר לשמך העליון, ולזמר לשמך העליון.
Continue privately.
צדיק כתמר יפרח, כרס בלבנון יזכה, שתולים בבית אדוני, וחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינבון בשיבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי, ולא עוולתה בו.
Page 29.
מקולות מים רבים, רבים אדירים, אדירים משברי ים, אדיר במרום אדוני. עדותיך נאמנו מאוד, לביתך נאווה קודש אדוני לאורך ימים.
And as a way of being able to conclude this portion of the service, We include a prayer that honors those who have passed. So I'd like to invite anybody who is observing the anniversary of a death, in Yiddish we call it a yahrzeit, or is in mourning and is currently mourning somebody who has passed. I invite you to rise, and we'll continue page 30. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shamei rabba, be'arma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach le'olam elamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei d'kudsha b'rechu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. You may be seated. At this time, before we go on in our service, I want to give us an opportunity. This is somewhat of a rare opportunity for us to all be together in this kind of space. Hopefully it'll become less rare as we continue to build our relationships. But I also, not just for us to be together, but there's an opportunity here for us to learn from each other as well. So I've invited each of the pastors to talk briefly and share a little bit briefly so they can share what the Sabbath means to each of them and each of their traditions, so we can kind of take a few moments to learn from each other. So I'm going to begin and invite Reverend Hurley to come up to go first, and then we'll kind of go down the line and each take just a couple minutes to share.
Thank you, Rabbi Stephen. It's such a joy to be with you all tonight, and we're your near neighbors. I'm the pastor of South Highland Presbyterian Church, just 2 blocks up the road, or is it down the road? Down the road.
Over.
And very honored to be with you tonight. I apologize that I'll be leaving shortly because of another obligation, but it's not because I don't want to be here. The Christian tradition, I'm sure you are aware, moved our focus of celebration to Sunday. In light of the resurrection, we believe, of Jesus Christ from the dead on the first day of the week. All the 4 Gospels refer to that first day of the week. Here's one of them from John 20, verse 1. Now, on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early, while it was still dark, and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. And Christians throughout the centuries have built upon that. Different times and different expressions of Christianity have had more and less rigorous applications of the text. The other passages in the New Testament, there are about 12 of them actually referring to the first day of the week. For example, in 1 Corinthians 16, verse 2, the Apostle Paul talks about the first day of the week in terms of the practical need of gathering resources for the ministries. On the first day of every week, each of you should put aside something and store it up as he may prosper, so that there will be no collecting when I come. And I understand in the Jewish tradition, you all do not pass the plate. It's not to be done in your services. And then in Acts chapter 20, verse 7, in reference to what takes place in a Christian worship service, much of what you've already done. We sing the Psalms, we speak the Psalms, we sing hymns. In this verse in Acts 20, verse 7, on the first day of the week, when we were gathered together to break bread, Paul talked with them, intending to depart on the next day. And by the way, it goes on, he spent quite a long time talking to them, so long that a young man fell out of the window during his long sermon and had to be revived, which he was. Our Presbyterian tradition comes out of the Protestant Reformation in the 1500s. And many Presbyterians, along with many other Protestant Christians, had a very zealous approach to the Sabbath. When I was a child in South Arkansas, they had the famous, as did Birmingham, blue laws. Everything shut down on the Christian Sabbath. Sunday was not a day to buy, to sell, even to go to many restaurants. That was my childhood experience. It was even more my parents' experience. My dad remembers that he was chastised for going out to play golf on a Sunday afternoon. and it was to be spent in worship, in reflection, quiet meditation. I pulled a couple of quotes, and then I'm done, out of our book of confessions, which are our historical documents going up from the early church to the present century, well, to the 20th century, the latest one. We have about 11 of them. In the Heidelberg Catechism, which is during the early stages of the Protestant Reformation in the 1500s, this question is asked: what is God's will for the fourth commandment? First, answer, that the gospel ministry and education for it be maintained, and that especially on the festive day of rest, I diligently attend to the assembly of God's people, to learn what God's word teaches, to participate in the sacraments, to pray to God publicly, and to bring Christian offerings for the poor. And then second, that every day of my life I rest from my evil ways, let the Lord work in me through the Spirit, and so begin in this life the eternal Sabbath. And so it's gone through the ages. We, as our Christian tradition, we set aside the first day of the week. In our particular congregation, we have two services, Sunday morning, 8:30 and 11. You're invited up the street anytime to join with us in worship, and we've been honored to have a number of Jewish participants with us from time to time. Thank you for letting me be with you. I guess the last thing to say is that it's no longer just the culture. It's not even the culture that tells us to do these things. It's our faith tradition, from which we learn a lot from the Jewish tradition, because rarely have you all had the culture backing you. So we're learning from you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. We're going to go invite Reverend Erica Cooper as well, talk about, from Baptist Church of the Covenant, to talk about her views of Sabbath and the tradition.
I don't know if many of you have met a Baptist woman pastor before, but here you go. Traditionally, Baptists have observed a form of Sabbath of what is called the Lord's Day, which are Sundays. And we know that first century Christians moved their worship from Saturdays to Sundays to kind of commemorate Jesus' resurrection, as Reverend Hurley said. But Sundays in modern Baptist life have involved things like morning and evening worship, Bible study for both children and for adults, large homemade family meals, and refraining from work and alcohol and Chick-fil-A. Now, that's the typical Baptist observance, but Baptist Church of the Covenant is not your typical Baptist church. We engage in many of these practices, yes, but when I think about how our particular faith community best keeps the Sabbath or Sundays holy, I don't really think about the activities we do or the activities we don't do, but more about the people we are with. For us, we find our holy rest in being together in our covenant community. Now, our church is largely made up of those who have no other place to belong. Many of us have been rejected by our families, or our churches, our cultural communities, because of our gender identities, our sexual orientations, our race, theologies, past traumas, poverty, neurodiversities, or mental health statuses. And what holds us together as a community is the deeply rooted belief that God's church should be a place that welcomes all people. Now, many of our people have trouble finding moments of true rest. Their lives are consumed with the constant work of code switching and closeting and pretending and pleasing and managing and self-regulating and coping. The work of merely existing can become exhausting, and the pressures to conform to someone else's norms can be suffocating. In Exodus 31, God says to Moses, on the seventh day, the Lord ceased from work and was refreshed. And here's where the Christian talks about Hebrew in the temple. I love that the word that is translated to refreshed in this verse comes from the Hebrew word nephash. I might be mispronouncing that, and I'm sorry. But it means soul, but it also means to breathe. To breathe. Sabbath helps us breathe. At Baptist Church of the Covenant, we aim to keep our Sabbaths holy by providing a place where people can breathe, a place where they can let go of all the work and the pressure that the world has placed upon them so that they can feel God's unconditional love and acceptance. Every Sunday when we gather for worship, study, fellowship, committee meetings, or youth group, we experience God's holiness. By allowing ourselves to be authentically us and allowing others to be authentically them, we find that there is no work that we must do in that moment. There is nothing to be earned or managed or concealed. We find rest in one another's love. We find rest in God, and we breathe.
And now I'd like to invite Reverend Finney to come up and share a little bit as well.
Good evening. First, I want to say thank you to Temple Bethel and Rabbi Henkin for inviting us to be part of this wonderful occasion. And then so in honor of our host, I want to acknowledge God by saying, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. And for my folks who don't have a clue what I just said, that would be, blessed are you, Lord our God, sovereign of the universe. Abigail Woolley Cutter says that of the 10, the command to observe the Sabbath has undoubtedly been the most difficult for Christians to interpret, and therefore perhaps easiest for us to pass over today with a shrug. And I'm sure that that's probably true for my Christian tradition. I grew up in the Pentecostal Holiness Church and asked me to do 3 minutes, and I can't get out my name in 3 minutes. But I'm a BK. I'm the preacher's kid, I'm the pastor's kid, and the bishop's kid, but it was my mother who had those titles and not my father. Daddy was definitely not a preacher. But in that tradition, they recognize the Sabbath from Exodus 20 and also the creation story from Genesis 1 as being Saturday. But like most Christians, that are not Seventh-day Adventists, we practice it being on Sunday. We taught it as a day of rest and a day of worship. The worship part we was very devout with. The day of rest, not so much. However, I will say that in my family, it was extremely rare for my mother to ever cook anything on Sunday other than breakfast. She had to do breakfast. And she would not allow us to do any kind of thing she considered unnecessary work on that day. But that was something unique to my mom, and that was not a Pentecostal tradition. As far as the Sabbath and what it means for Covenant Community Church, which is a United Church of Christ congregation, I have taught on the Sabbath, and in doing so as a pastor in the Christian faith tradition, I, of course, look to Jesus as my example, even on the Sabbath. And in the Christian text that we know as the Gospel of Mark, chapter 2 and verse 27, there's this verse where Jesus says, the Sabbath was made for humans and not humans for the Sabbath. And so for us, due to many factors, but a big one is varying work schedules, we strongly encourage a day of rest each week, but because the fact is your body need and was made for a time to have rest. We also encourage people to attend worship on Sundays, albeit nowadays not just in person, by Zoom, the routine, live stream, and later on YouTube if you can't catch it at worship time. But we do not adhere to a particular day of the week, such as Saturday or Sunday, as being the only days that you can observe a Sabbath, a day of rest. So I guess for us, Abigail Woolley Cutter is right. While we encourage people to observe a Sabbath in their lives, it's not clearly taught or adhered to as our Jewish brothers and sisters. And again, I want to say thank you to Rabbi Henkin and Temple Bethel for hosting us for this gathering and for willing to serve a fat preacher dinner.
Thank you, Reverend. And we'll invite Reverend Paul Eknes to come up next and share with us too.
And you'll be glad to know that I'm the last preacher for this. I also want to thank you all for creating this event, for being able to invite us to be a part of it who don't normally get to share this. And I want you to know that I and Pilgrim Church UCC folks who are gathered here with us, that are joining us here for this gathering, are so grateful to be in this moment with all who have come together. This is the first time for many of us to be in the same place and space together as we welcome the Sabbath. And I want you to know that I'm a bit overwhelmed by the emotion and the joy I'm experiencing right now to simply be together, because we recognize what a good thing it is for us to do this and how rare it is for us to make the effort to do this. That we allow ourselves to experience each other, our congregations, our faith traditions in one place, to simply let go for a moment of being responsible to fix all that is happening out there, so that we might simply be here in God's presence and with each other. I have come, like many, to think of the Sabbath in new ways. I have come to rely on the Sabbath as a time for sanity. I don't know if you have noticed, but there is a lot that is happening, particularly within Christianity right now, that is simply, to use a complex theological term, bat crap crazy. Amen. You've experienced it. I get it. And I want you to know it holds much of my week, much of my consternation, and much of my prayer life to simply cope with the layers and layers and layers of stupidity, of hate gussied up in religious language, and of old bias that masquerades as what some think it means to love Jesus. For pilgrims, we have come to rely on sacred space as sanctuary from that onslaught, being in a safe place together. It happens regularly on Sunday mornings in our safe confines of worship space. And it also happens in moments like these where sanity is honored in the presence of holiness and holds myriad names and diverse traditions and caring people who simply want to make this world a better place for all of us. Sabbath is trusting grace to hold us for just a moment while we breathe, while we rest, while we relax and let go, while we enjoy the company of friends and just simply bask in the presence that is greater than that craziness that tries to hoard our every waking moment. You know, the word will still be there when Shabbat is over. The work will still be there throughout the rest of the week for us to do. But for now, and for all those around the world who join hearts with us tonight, Kabbalat Shabbat. Thank you.
So I want to take a moment as well. I want to say two brief things, and like my friends, it's hard to keep it brief, but I'll try. So just to explain the Jewish tradition of Shabbat, of Sabbath, is deeply rooted in the story of creation. Why do we start it on Friday night? Because in the creation story it says, Vayi erev, vayi voker, yom echad sheni. There was evening and there was morning. So the rabbis learned from that The day starts in the evening at sunset and goes through the following sunset. So that's why the Sabbath starts Friday evening and goes through Saturday evening, because the day starts at night. But as you go through the story of creation, what is God doing? God is creating for 6 days. And for those of you who commonly, for my congregants, who often are here on Friday nights, you'll hear me say that so often in these 6 days, we're so busy and we load our schedule so much that we often don't even know what we're doing anymore. We are so often going from one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing that we don't actually stop and reflect on anything that just happened in our day. So what do? Like God, for 6 days we do that. That's okay. But on the 7th day, God stopped. God said, I need to rest. I need to be refreshed. And God blessed that day as a holy day. And so in our experience, we do the same thing. We don't do any kind of creative acts on Shabbat. So anything that would be cooking, writing, building, things that involve creation, we stop ourselves from doing. And we let the world sit as it is and accept and enjoy the world that God created for us on this 7th day. So that's a brief view of the Jewish view of Sabbath. But I do want to echo a little bit of what my colleagues said as well, that this is a somewhat rare opportunity, but hopefully won't become one. So I want to take an opportunity to say thank you to my colleagues for helping me organize this and for helping make this happen. And thank you for coming here to make this happen. But I also want to share a blessing as well that we often say in Hebrew. It says, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. And you say that the first time that you do something for the first time, or you do it for the first time in a long time. And you say, blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us life, who has sustained us, and who has allowed us to reach this time. And together to that, we will say, Amen. We're not quite done yet, but I want to give you guys a couple moments, because as much as this is about learning and as much as this is about us getting together, it's also about us building relationships. So I just want to take literally about 2 minutes. I want to invite everybody to stand up, because it's very hard to build relationships if we don't actually know anybody. So I want to take about 2 minutes and introduce yourself to someone you don't know. If you can do at least 3 people, that's even better.
I do the thing. Clap once if you hear me. Clap twice if you hear me.
When we're doing the private parts, you might want to do it like his ladies.
You notice that I didn't sing this a different time very, very slowly. It's like, you better just do this.
We're going.
Yes, no problem. What time is it?
So everybody will have a chance, especially if you're staying for dinner. Afterwards, you'll have a chance to continue meeting people, continue your conversations. But so that we can get to dinner, I want to invite you to come back. As I invite you to remain standing as we'll turn to page 39A in our books. Seated. Continue 3 lines from the top, page 39A.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני אמרי ורבים.
Page 40.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אהבת תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לימדת על כן אדוני אלוהינו ושופטנו
Page 41.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושינתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך וברכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך.
Page 42. We continue privately.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
We'll continue together at the top, page 44.
ומלכותו ורצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם
Page 45.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו מלכנו ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני, הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו והכל עמו ישראל, הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
So, if you notice, this last section that we just recited was very biblical heavy. It had a lot of parts of the Torah and the Bible in it. So, which is a part of listening. We're listening to God's revelation during that part. But we're now going to transition to a part where we talk to God, and it's about our own personal prayers. So I'm going to invite you to rise as we prepare for that section, beginning on page 46.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה,
אמן.
עמד יברח חירותי והמליך מלכותי בחייכונו ויומכונו וחיי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה ובזמן קריב ימרו.
Amen.
יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ויאמרו
Amen. This next part is a private prayer for God, or prayers to God. So you're welcome to use the Hebrew that's on the right side of the page if you want to feel adventurous. You're welcome to use the English translation on the left, or you're also welcome to use this time for your own personal prayer, reflection, and meditation, as we'll begin on page 47 privately through page 52. If you are still praying, please feel free to take your time and finish at your own pace. We will continue page 54.
יתגדל ויקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
למד וחירותי והמליך מלכותי בחייכון ובימייכון ובחיי דכל ישראל בעגליו זמן קריב וימרו.
אמן.
יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי דקודשה. לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ואימרו.
אמן.
תתקבל צלותון ובאותהון דכל ישראל קודם אבוהון דבשמי ואימרו.
אמן.
יהי שלום רב משמי וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואימרו.
אמן.
עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואימרו.
Amen. There's a blessing we usually do at this point, but we're going to skip it because we're going to do it at dinner. So we're going to move ahead to page 56 as I invite you to rise for Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארץ, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, ולא עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נטש מצרים.
Bottom of page 57.
כי המלכות שלך היא ולעולמי עד תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. And once again, as we prepare to conclude the service, we're going to invite those who are mourning or those who are observing the anniversary of a loved one's death, either today or in the past week. We invite you to rise as we'll turn to page 58 for the Mourner's Kaddish. יתגדל ויקדש שמי רבה, בהרמה דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריך הוא. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן. Before we conclude, I just want to take a brief moment for a couple concluding things. So first of all, again, thank you for being here. Thank you for coming. This is lovely to be able to learn together and share together this experience. I want to say a special kol hakavod and thank you to Robin and Dahlia for leading us so beautifully today. And for those who are staying for dinner, I just want to give you a couple of what's going to happen. So after this, we're going to go into our cultural center, which is down that way. There's going to be grape juice out on the table. Please grab a cup, but do not drink it right away. We're going to say a blessing over it before we drink it. So you grab a cup, and then everybody has assigned seats. So try to grab a cup of grape juice, find your assigned seat, and then you can stand by it and see who you're standing with at the table. If I inadvertently separated you from your family, feel free to pull up an extra chair at your table, or feel free to trade spots with somebody at the table where your spouse or your family is. I apologize, but I didn't always have who was together, so I did the best I could. And then we'll go in there and we'll do a couple blessings, and I'll explain the blessings that we're doing in there, and then we'll go ahead and have dinner together, and we'll learn a little bit from each other at dinner as well. If you're not staying for dinner, we're no less thankful that you're here, and we're grateful that you came, and next time we do this, hopefully you'll come for dinner that time. So thank you, everybody, and Shabbat Shalom. We're going to go ahead and conclude with Shalom Aleichem. There's a story in the Talmud in which two angels accompany us home from synagogue every week, and we ask those angels to bless us for the week ahead. So we're going to sing a song as we ask them to bless us with Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. V'melech, v'melech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lochem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. V'melech, v'melech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ya la la la, ya la la, ya la la la, ya la la, ya la la la, ya la la, ya la 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 la la. Baruni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. V'melech, v'melech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tetzem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. V'melech, v'melech, Malachei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ya la la la, ya la la, ya la 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 la la.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for coming. And if you're staying for dinner, please feel free to head over. And if you're not, then travel home safely, and Shabbat Shalom, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
This was so fun.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for bringing me.
Pleasure, my pleasure.
Hi. Shabbat Shalom, my dear.
By the way. Shabbat Shalom. How are you?